How are you all? I'm twinkling. My name's Colin. What's yours? Say it again. And again. Right. I heard one name then. Is there a Stuart here? No? There's no Stuart here. I didn't hear that. Right. What's your name? Sylvia now is what I'm hearing. This audience should be called Sylvia. Hello, Sylvia. Yeah, you are. Can I call you all Sylvia from now on?
Well, Colin, welcome back to Florida.
Thank you.
Because a lot of these people who don't know this, your first appearance was here as the Doctor.
It was in 1983.
Yes.
Had you
84.
I think I'll take 30.
Well, no, Dan knows everything. But I know that I hadn't done anything when I first came over here, and I started recording it in November '83. So it must have been before that I first came here, which was Miami.
Miami?
Was the one you're thinking about, Miami? Oh, that might have been the second time I came over there. Anyway,
you were here.
What the heck, it was a long time ago. And we're all much older and not much wiser. Getting comfy.
But yes, this is the first time, so welcome back to Florida. Apologize for the rain.
Hey, where did that rain come from? I looked at the forecast before I left England, and it was sun. And suddenly we got rain. Yeah, a bit like England, really. But I mean, to be honest, it doesn't matter, because we're all having a good time inside. Okay. And thank goodness it was nice last night for the pool party. Who was in the pool last night? Did you disgrace yourselves? I do hope so, you're supposed to.
There were too many children around.
Well, you can disgrace yourselves with children around today.
Well, that was, you don't know their parents.
So, I'm sure there's plenty of questions. Let's go ahead and get started. Bob?
Okay, well, we'll start off with where you left us hanging. You had an episode with a total balderdash in your guys' plans.
Oh, the episode in the panel I did an hour ago, we were talking about Big Finish, and I've said that most of their scripts were to me entirely reasonable and understandable. However, when you come to Mind Warp, which is the one where I take Perry out onto a rock and torture her, when I read that script, I said to the director, I said, is that for real? Because I don't know how familiar you are with Mind Warp, but Mind Warp is a part of the evidence produced by the Valeyard against me when I'm on trial, in Trial of a Time Lord. And we discover, excuse me, we discover eventually that the Valeyard had been playing tricks with the Matrix, and some of the stuff was not true that he was saying about me. But within that story, I had the mind warp attached to my head, which had made me go a bit strange. So I said, am I really doing this to Perry, and my mind has been addled by the mind warp, or did it never happen, and it's a lie told by the Valeyard through the Matrix, or, third alternative, am I doing it because I know I'm being watched, and I'm pretending to do it to Perry, so the bad guys will trust me, so I can do what I want to do. And the director looked at me and said, I don't know, ask the script editor. So I asked the script editor, Eric Saywood. He said, I don't know, ask the writer. So they got on to Philip Martin. Was it Philip Martin who wrote that? Yes, it was. They asked him, he said, I didn't write that bit, Eric Saywood wrote it. So I decided for myself that it was easiest to assume the whole thing never happened. It was a complete and utter lie, a fabrication by the Valeyard to convince the court that I was evil, and therefore I could play it balmy and mad and evil, which is what I did. But how you ever, watching it, understood what was going on there, I have no idea. The people who wrote it didn't know what was going on.
So we talked about Big Finish. For those that don't know what Big Finish is, it's a company in the UK that does audio plays for the classic rock. And it really has given you guys a second lease on life in terms of the show.
Yeah.
How has the audio experience been as opposed to appearing on the show?
Now, how many of you were here at the Big Finish panel just now? Quite a lot of you, sure.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of you who weren't, so...
Yeah.
I mean, basically, Big Finish stepped into the breach when the programme was cancelled in 1989 and single-handedly kept Doctor Who in the consciousness of certainly of Britain and hopefully over here as well. And they did it, I think, with great style, because I've now done 63 stories for Big Finish, which at one brief moment, until Tom finally relented and decided he'd do some, made me the Doctor who'd done the most stories, which is kind of ironic, really. But I love doing it because the quality of the writing is unceasingly superb, and I've always been a great fan of audio drama. As I'm driving, I tend not to listen to music. I like the spoken word and I like plays. So I listen, all my Doctor Who audios that I've listened to in my car, because I tend to drive quite a lot. And if the journey is less than 2 hours, I have to sit in a car park at the other end until the story's finished, because I forget what happened in them. You know, I record them, and then 18 months later, I hear them for the first time, and in between those 2 times, I've made 4 or 5 others. So I forget what the stories are. So I can listen to them afresh like you can. It's quite nice.
Do you have any favorites?
The F word.
Yes. Preferences.
Yes, there are some that stick out. There are moments that stick out for me. And one of the moments was right at the end of one called Arrangements for War, which was, if you haven't heard it, I won't spoil it, but it was a moment when you saw an emotional side of the Sixth Doctor, and it was with Maggie Stables, who played my companion.
Evelyn.
Thank you. What's her name?
Evelyn.
Evelyn. Yes, Evelyn. The lovely Evelyn. I'm terrible on names, you know. I once opened the door. I invited 2 couples to dinner at my home, and I knew all 4 of them extremely well, but separately, so the 2 didn't know the other 2. So when they arrived, I said, "Oh, let me introduce you." "No, you better introduce yourselves." Because I've known them for years, couldn't remember their names. Hey, what's in her name? Does anybody else have that problem? Yeah. Oh, it's not just me then, good.
And any other questions? Oh. Question? Yep.
When did you first start watching Doctor Who?
I watched the very first episode on the 23rd of November 1963. I was a law student in London. I came home. As I came in the door of my flat that I was sharing with 5 other guys, the television was on, and on came this programme. And half an hour later, I hadn't moved. I was standing there watching this amazing programme. Now, you may think, looking at the black and white flickering image of the first episode, An Unearthly Child, how could he be convinced by that? But that was state-of-the-art television in those days, and I just loved it. And I couldn't wait till the next episode.
And now we are approaching the 50th anniversary, and you've done your work on the 50th anniversry audio that was just recently released.
Yes, it's out now. Has anybody heard it yet? Right at the end. Is it any good?
It's great.
Because I've got it, but I haven't heard it. Is it good?
Yes.
Am I good? Am I all right? I'm fantastic, apparently. I like you. Because the only script they gave me was my bits, and we couldn't all get together at the same time. They probably thought it better. We didn't, actually. So I just turned out and did my bits. So I'm really looking forward to hearing it. And everybody's been very, very good, and not asked me, "Are you in the 50th episode?" And
Would you like us to?
Go on then.
Are you in the 50th episode?
I can't answer that.
I hope
Actually, thank you very much. That's Jen. Give her a round of applause. Jen's brilliant. I can answer it actually, for the simple reason that I'm not. And neither is Peter, and neither is Sylvester, and neither is Paul. Those are the only ones I've spoken to. But watch out for something else.
Something that Peter hinted at last year when he was here.
The thing that Peter hinted at last year is, well, it might be more interesting than the 50th anniversary show. So just keep your eyes peeled on the internet. Look out for links and for information, because we've had a ball.
And if when that project arrives, I'll share it on Facebook through the convention site. Questions from the audience again. Julio.
Of all the new series villains that have been introduced in the relaunch, which one would you have liked to face as the Doctor in your time?
Oh, the new villains from the new series. Oh, I like those ones that had wings. What were their names? No, not the Weeping Angels. The ones with wings. Those ones. They made me laugh. What are they called?
The Trellitanes? The one with Anthony Head?
Flatulence.
Oh, the Sylvain.
The Slitheen.
Yes.
Oh, I love the Slitheen. I never thought Doctor Who would have rude villains with stomach problems. That made me laugh a lot. I'd like to face the Slitheen. But the Weeping Angels, what is it with these young doctors? They can't deal with something as simple as a weeping angel. Okay, there's a weeping angel walking towards me now. I'm the 6th Doctor. I know how to deal with it. I just do that. Switch eyes. You don't need to blink, just wink. You know, oh dear. You need to be. Look, does anyone now? I can't remember the exact number. When I did a Revelation of the Daleks and I climbed over that wall with Perry, I said, I am a 900 and something year old Time Lord. Can anybody here tell me what that age was? Because it was quite high.
It's 50, 60 something.
967-year-old Time Lord.
Yeah.
And the programme's been on for another 20 years, and they're still saying they're 900 years old. It's time one of them was 1,000, for God's sake.
Matt Smith is 1,000 now.
So, there is a new Doctor on the way with Mr. Peter Capaldi. What were your thoughts when you heard the announcement?
Yeah, I don't know Peter. I've seen a lot of his work, and I think he's a brilliant choice. And they've got it very right with all three so far. Because when Christopher Eccleston, I thought he was the most unlikely choice to play the Doctor. And I've seen a lot of his other work, and he's done some stuff which I thought was magnificent. He did something with Russell T Davies about the Second Coming.
Yes, it was called The Second Coming.
It was called The Second Coming.
Yes.
I thought he was brilliant in that. So I think it's because he liked Russell that he agreed to do Doctor Who. And for me, he had the best line in Doctor Who ever, which was, at the end of the Doctor dances, everybody lives. The best thing about him, isn't that the Doctor? And he had a kind of wolfish glee and delight and passion. And then along came David, that every girl under the age of 9,000 oh, David Tennant, he's a little on the thin side for my acting, but what a fabulous actor. I mean, he really was. And I'm afraid there's a whole generation of girls now for whom, just as I think Tom had a huge following back in the 70s and 80s, Now it's the Tennant girls. Who, when he's 70, there'll be all these middle-aged women coming up and going, "Oh, David Tennant."
The same ones that you're getting now.
It's very true. And then he went, and when I heard, when it was announced another child was playing, I actually got quite depressed. I thought, oh, not another teenager. And he's the youngest ever, I think, isn't he?
Yes.
Matt. Except he's not. He's also the oldest ever. Because I believe every second that he's 26 going on 900. I mean, he's brought a wonderful kind of mercurial, lovable, huggable, random quality to the part. And they've all been magnificent. Now, I've seen Peter Capaldi do a lot of stuff, and he's a grown-up. He's the same age as William Hartnell was when he played the part, which is phenomenal, because he looks about 40 years younger. I mean, that's what's happened in the last 50 years, is that 70 is the new 40, or 40 is the new stuff, I don't know which it is. But you know what I'm saying. I've seen him in that political programme he does, which is very funny, and he's got an amazing intensity and passion. And I think he's going to be a great doctor. And I get, fortunately, I haven't heard anybody saying, "Oh, I don't think he'll be any good," because that usually happens. Every time a doctor goes, everyone has a pre-mortem for the new incoming doctor. And I've never ever seen a bad doctor yet. So I'm hoping that I wasn't one either.
When we had our party to watch the announcement live, there was a cheer and claps when he came on in the room. And we had about 200 fans there, so yeah, they were very much looking forward to it.
And in common with the last couple of doctors, I'm not sure how much of a fan Matt was, but he liked Doctor Who. David Tennant was a mad Doctor Who fan, and so is Peter Capaldi apparently, which is lovely. See, a man in his 50s is a Doctor Who fan.
And Matt.
Speaking of Peter Capaldi, there was something online not too long ago where Stephen Moffat supposedly said that somewhere in the next season they're going to explain why Peter Capaldi's doctor looks like the previous character that he played on Doctor Who. In your time, did anybody even bring up the idea of trying to explain why your doctor looked like Maxwell?
No, you see, because if you think about it, Doctor Who spans thousands of years, because he travels through time and space. But this guy, Maxwell, was on Gallifrey, right, which is a billion, thousand, trillion, squillion light years away from Earth. I think you're going to find a few people who look like each other in a universe that's that far spread, full of people who look like human beings. So I see no need whatsoever. I did ask John Nathan Turner whether I could just do a cameo as Maxwell during my time as the Doctor. And so we walk past each other in the corridor and I do I think that would be quite fun. I like all that, but he deems that unnecessary, so we didn't do it. I think it'll be a shame if they try and... I mean, Peter Capaldi was in episodes with
David Tennant.
David Tennant.
And Torchwood.
Yeah.
Playing what with David Tennant?
Fires of Pompeii, he was the father of the family that
So he was in Pompeii.
Yeah.
And when was Pompeii?
Italy.
2,000 years ago. Yeah? So, why do we need to know? Every now and then someone says to me, "Oh, there's a guy who lives in Durham, round the corner from my granddad, looks exactly like you." And don't you all get that? I mean, occasionally I see somebody who's a spitting image of somebody I know. And I say, is it? And they go, no. So, I think it would be a bit clunky to link Pompeii with the Doctor. Why bother? It's... there are so many other inconsistencies in the programme. Why bother with that one?
Mr. Baker, on the DVD for Sylvester McCoy's first appearance, there's a mini documentary about why you didn't want to film your regeneration sequence, and I'll leave it to you to say how accurate or not that was. But I'm curious, and over the years since then, do you wish you perhaps had filmed something for that, or?
No, because I am still the Doctor. Just because a little tiny Scotsman wriggles around in my jacket for 5 minutes with a wig on doesn't make him a doctor. He started a new line of doctors. He is the first of the McCoy era. I am the enduring Doctor of the original classic series. I have been playing the part now for 30 years. I have broken the record. I don't know what they said in that programme about why I refused to do the regeneration, but the reason I refused is because they asked me to commit in October to a couple of days' work in April. And I said, no way. If I'm going now, I'm going. So you either write me in the series and I'll go at the end, or sort yourselves out. And they chose that latter option. And I'm glad. I'm glad I didn't do it.
And Black Hat.
So, by that same logic, I guess you are the ongoing of the Pertwee line. We never saw Troughton regenerate into Pertwee's third Doctor.
Didn't you?
No, it was done off screen.
It was off screen?
Yes.
Well, it may have happened though. But you saw something. If you didn't see it, and everyone accepts it happened, then maybe it did. But you saw it not happen to me, which is different. Though I thought they all happened in vision.
And
Alright, so all doctors have unique costumes. Yours was probably one of the most creative. Did you get a chance to help with that, or did you just kind of walk in?
Input on the costume.
Some of you may have heard this before. After they offered me the part, John Nathan Turner asked me to have a think about what I would like to wear. And first of all, the first thing I said was, does it have to be a costume? Can't I just wear clothes? Can't the Doctor just wear what is appropriate in the place that he's in? Because if you really want to go around righting wrongs and sorting things out in strange places, wouldn't it be better if you didn't stick out like a sore thumb? And they said, no, we have to have some kind of costume. So I thought about it, and I came back and suggested what I wanted. And I was told no, I couldn't have it. And the next person but two after me, yes, did get it. Christopher Eccleston. I said, all in black. Nice long black coat that you can wrap around yourself and vanish into the background. And they said, no, that's too close to the master, he's the one who dresses in black. I think you should be totally tasteless. So the poor designer, Pat Godfrey, had several goes at designing something totally tasteless, and they kept coming back with things that... it's very hard to ask a good designer to do something tasteless. So there was slightly clashing colours, but it was quite tasteful. And in the end, she just sat down with some crayons and said, oh, you mean something like this? And he went, yes, that's what I want. So the only consolation for me is I was on the inside looking out. You're the ones who have to put up with it. I've now developed a certain fondness for it, particularly because all the little figures that you can now buy, all the children want mine because it's the most colourful. So I ended up with a plus because I get 0.0000001 of a penny for each one.
You also have the most costumes out of the classic range as well, in the toys and figures. Because you have the blue one, the real-time version, and then they've got a regeneration version and Peter. Yeah.
Oh well, even better.
Okay, from the back.
What's your opinion on
50th anniversary story, not including any of the original Dr. Who series?
Well, I always said, for the last year I've been asked, do you want to be in it? And I've said, it's going to be very hard to come up with a good story that incorporates all the living doctors. Because as soon as you've got that kind of fractured storyline, it becomes less and less satisfying. And also you've got to, if you're going to get other doctors in it, they don't want to come and do just a couple of lines in somebody else's story. Each one of us has an ego of varying sizes, and we wouldn't want to be an extra. So we want to be doing something, to be seen to be our doctor. And when you've got that many people to satisfy, ultimately it would satisfy the fans, who are a significant but small percentage of the total viewers. And the rest of the viewers might be totally perplexed about what these doddering old gits are doing, wandering around being the doctor, when all they want is a good story. So it may be that Moffat was wise not to incorporate us all. So even though part of us, we all thought it would be nice to be asked, and we weren't, there's another part that says, I can quite understand why not, really. I suppose we could have all had a little bit, if we were all treated equally, and all the classic doctors, as we're now called, had a small cameo role, maybe even playing another character. And I'd have been very hacked off if I were to watch it and find that, Sylvester's in it and I'm not, or Peter's in it and I'm not. So it has to be all or none at all. I think that's quite clear. And it would be quite hard to do a good story. Although, having said that, Big Finish have managed it. But we all look the same on audio. On audio, I look like I looked in 1983. In vision, not so much.
And Berkeley had a question.
Your doctor, how do you feel about props? It's like your doctor never really used the sonic screwdriver much. And he used his wits and his brain.
Yeah, that was John Nathan Turner decided that too many writers were using the sonic screwdriver as a means of solving problems. And it became too easy to get the doctor into a terrible situation. And they go, oh, how do we get him out of it? Sonic screwdriver. So he banned it. I think I had a sonic lance at one point in a story. I'm going to tell you what it was. Attack the Cybermen. Sonic lance. What did I do with it? Oh, I stuck into a Cyberman. Oh, aren't I butch? My doctor got into terrible trouble in Britain because they were saying how violent my doctor was. Because apparently I pushed people into an acid bath. No, I didn't. I got out of the way when they were trying to push me in. I think I came across as callous because I made some flip comment, like, forgive me if I don't join you. But I think there's a difference in covering up the fact that you just missed death with a flip comment and pushing people in. And there was a groundswell of anti-violent opinion on. I mean, I love violence on television. It's my kind of television, when entire planets explode and creatures erupt and destroy all the skyscrapers in New York. I love it! Because it's fiction. I don't want it to happen, really. Right there.
If there was an episode that you really liked, that you'd like to redo, like for example, maybe you say, well, Attack the Cybermen, some part 2 and 3, or sorry, part 3, the ending, where they're on fellows and so forth, you could see the budgetary limitations. If you could go and redo an episode that you really like the story of, what episode would it be?
If you
Like,
could,
I'm struggling to know what the question is.
if you could go back and refilm or revisit an episode that you had done, it'd make it better, either production-wise or effects.
Oh, probably Time Lash. Time Lash needed a bit of improvement. I think the budget was running down a bit when they were doing Time Lash, and the story was not a bad story. And the idea of H.G. Wells was a brilliant idea. But in the execution, Time Lash looks, I don't know if it's a word you use over here, but naff. It looks a bit naff. And cheesy, that's the word here, is it? It looks a bit cheesy. And I wouldn't mind having a go at doing that again, with a little bit of recasting here and there.
And right here. What were you doing when you found out you were going to be the doctor?
What was I doing?
Yes.
I was talking to John Nathan Turner. I had done Maxwell in the Peter Davison story, and I got to know John as a result of it. And John Nathan Turner, who was producing it then, and we got on really well. We laughed together at various things. And later that summer, because I was already had a certain status because of a series I did in Britain called The Brothers, which was very popular. And I was voted the most hated man in Britain in 1976 for the character I played. It was a kind of JR character in that series. So he rang me up and said, could I give him a call? And I thought, he probably wants me to open his local fete, is what I thought. Because in the summer in Britain, every village and town has a fete, and they try and get someone off the telly to come and open it. And I thought, I bet that's what John wants. And he said, any chance you're interested in lunch? Yeah, right, go and have lunch, and try and think of excuses for not going to open a fete in Brighton, where he lived. And we had lunch. He said, now, I want to make it quite clear, this is not an offer, but Peter is leaving, and I wonder if you ever thought you'd like to be Doctor Who? I said, yeah, I'd like to do that. He said, well, go away and have a think about how you'd like to play it, and come back and have another chat. So that's the first time I heard about it. And I went over and and I came back, we chatted, and he said, right, okay, I want you to do it. And I've discovered since that I think every other doctor has had to do either a film test or audition with half a dozen other people. I think I'm the only one that ever got asked by the producer without having to...
I think David Tennant was the only other.
Oh, David Tennant didn't have to do a film test. Oh.
He had already done Casanova with Russell.
Oh, of course he had, yes. Yeah. Well, of the classics then, maybe.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. So it was... for me, the biggest memory I have is the day I did my first studio recording. And at the end of Peter's story, Caves of Androzani, and I'd done my little bit. And I went home and opened the door, went into the living room in our house, and my wife was sitting reading a book. And I stood there and I said, I am the doctor. And without looking up from my book, she said, that's nice, dear, could you put the rubbish out? And that was the best possible thing that you could have said at the time.
Right here on you. How did you get from law school to acting?
Well, that's all tied in with why I went to law school in the first place, and that's because my father told me to. So when I was 18, my dad, I told him I wanted to be an actor and I wanted to go to university and all that, and he said, you start in the lawyer's office on Monday. So, I don't know about 18-year-olds now, but certainly back then, in the mists of time, 18-year-olds, or this one, certainly did what his father told him to. So I did 5 years of articles and law school and working in a lawyer's office. it was very interesting, certainly for an actor. You know, met a few murderers, and which is an interesting experience, and seen some of the seamier side of life, and some of the most boring side of life, which a lawyer's office can be, and some of the cruelest side of life, because people with money can use the law as a great big bludgeon to get what they want for people without money. And that didn't sit easily with me. Perhaps it was something to do with the fact that the doctor was lurking inside me. I had too strong a sense of justice to want to earn my living. And you can earn a good living from oppressing the people, and a very poor living as a lawyer by defending the oppressed. But all the time I was doing it, I joined every single amateur drama group within 30 miles of where I lived in Manchester in England. So I was usually, excuse me, it's very dry, it's central, it's the air conditioning. I was usually, every night when I should have been huddled over my law books, I was usually rushing off to rehearse a play in some small drama group somewhere. It was a brilliant time. I had a brilliant time. And then when I was 21, 22, my father, who was then 49, had a heart attack and a stroke, from which he never had recovered, even though he lived a few years after that. And it made me realise that, this is a bit serious, that you only get one crack at this thing we call life, and why not do what you want to do? Why not give it a go? So I snuck off an audition for drama school and got in, and 3 years later I was released onto an unsuspecting world. And I've been very lucky, and anyone who says that their career, if they have one, is not based on luck is probably telling you lies, because the two biggest jobs I got, one was that Paul Merrily character in The Brothers, which for 3 years I was loathed by everybody in Britain. I got because a producer I worked for knew that I'd been a lawyer and I could handle law speak in the series. I was invited in to play a small part, and then a couple of other people left the series, and my part got bigger and bigger and bigger until I became the kind of main character in it and took over the world practically. And if that part had been up for grabs, if they'd known what it was right at the beginning, every young male actor in Britain would have been up for it. As it was, I kind of snuck in through the back door. And the luck of having the Doctor Who producer decide that I was the man to play the part, because after I'd finished playing Maxwell, we met at a wedding of a mutual friend, and it reminded him that I might be the guy to play the part, apparently. So that's all to do with luck. But that's how I progressed from lawyer to actor. If I did law, I can certainly read a contract, which is coming extremely useful on occasion.
And in blue.
So you were talking about the inconsistencies of Doctor Who. Have you ever seen the episode Midnight, and how do you feel about that episode?
Episode called
Midnight.
Which one's that?
With David Tennant on the sand miner with the knocking and the alien that steals their voice. He's on basically a plane, and they're going across this planet of diamonds. Leslie Sharp is in it.
No, do you know, that's the one I've never seen. I thought I'd seen all of David's. I hadn't seen any of the last season of Matt either. I've got it all recorded on my TV at home, but for some reason I've never got around to seeing it.
Yeah, Leslie Sharp's in it. She's good.
Leslie Sharp's a good actress. Why is that an important one?
You'll find out.
I'll find out. I'll watch it now. Midnight. The other one I haven't seen is the one on the bus in the desert. No? Forget that one now. But my friend David Troughton's in it, isn't it?
David Troughton's in Midnight, yes.
He's in Midnight? Is that the one on the bus in the desert then?
No. That's Planet of the Dead, but yeah.
Okay.
And Phil Rutter here.
Yeah, I really liked you as the doctor. You were my favorite, and I wanted to know all of this.
Could you say that again louder?
I wanted to know which, if any, of the other doctors really influenced your role, as well as what outside of Doctor Who may have influenced it.
Your influences.
You know, I can honestly say that they all did and none of them did, in a sense. I didn't deliberately try. Occasionally, I put my hand up on my lapels, just to give an echo of the first Doctor. And occasionally, when I was doing it, something would happen, and I think, oh, that's a bit second Doctor or third Doctor. And I'd just do it for the heck of it. But in terms of influence, every single one of them has made it their own. So I think the most honest way of doing the part is to make it your own, rather than to slavishly take anything from any of your predecessors. And I think that's why all the Doctors I've seen have been so successful. Because there is a kind of doctorness at the core of all of them, which you have to have, which is all about, you know, it's exactly the same thing as the Lone Ranger or Sherlock Holmes or all those characters, a desire for the truth and for good and to fight for the oppressed, all that kind of stuff, you know. All the great stories of legend and fiction contain the stranger who comes into town when things are pretty darn bad, sorts it all out. They all say, hey, are you going to stay with us? No, I have things to do. And he goes off into the night. And that's what the Doctor is. That's the Doctorness. And the mere fact of casting different people in it means they bring different stuff to it. So I didn't consciously, except on a whim occasionally, when you were actually filming it, just put something in that might make people think, oh yeah, Pertwee used to do that, or sorry, the third Doctor.
Alright, got time for one more right there with Julie.
I was wondering, what kind of impact does playing Doctor have on your personal life, or on family?
Yes, well, I told you what the impact it had on my wife. She was... I'm not even sure she's seen all my stories, to be honest. And I was saying at the panel earlier that I've got my 63 Big Finish audios on the shelf, and none of my family have listened to any of them. Not one of them. But I'm not that bothered, to be honest. But maybe when I'm long gone, they'll pluck one down. But I remember one of the funniest things that ever happened was that when Doctor Who came back, in that intervening 11 years, because my first child was a baby when I was doing Doctor Who. So when it finished with Sylvester, I had, when did it end? 89. In 89, my oldest child was 4, and I've had 3 more daughters since then. So for them, Doctor Who didn't really figure in the slightest. And every now and then I would talk about it. If they say, oh, I'm bored and it's raining, then I'd say, oh, there's these videos I have here. Would you like to sit and watch Trial of a Time Lord? No. Then he came back, and they were watching Christopher Eccleston. Might have been 2 or 3 episodes in, and one of them suddenly said, hang on a minute. Doctor Who? Is that what you did? Yes, I said. What, you were Doctor Who? Yes. Yeah. 20 years ago I was, yes. No! So then they watched them all, and suddenly I got a bit of respect, briefly, in my own home. It has now waned. And whatever this something is that Peter has organised, that you will see at some point, that element figures in it, of the lack of respect from children.
Well, I can tell you that you may not get any respect at home. You certainly get it here with us. Ladies and gentlemen. something to zip out before the bad mom hits?